welcome to White Eagle Speaks TV, another episode. And today on the show we have Canupa Gluha of the Lakota Nation of Independence. And we have Mark Crodock, Harry Mitchell, and Anna with us today. And it's an honor and pleasure for them to be here on White Eagle Speaks TV. So, Canupa Gluha, explain. Tell us more about himself and the organization.
Okay, Filamesto. Let Hokel let Ako Pink Tekile Wolakot Ogna Chamuk. Hewa Glusta Hunter, Takomani, Mila Huskat Hawo, Hekile, Sokata Ibrabling, no, Dana, Ewa Blankite. And you can't let Chankogna, Lakota, or Kola Kichekile, Techeon Hina Jimna, Isha Techeon Komanepi. You can't let Chalakes et Akota Oyate.youtube.com, Wahonko Kapi. You can't let you if Talon Hina Jimna, et Daha Iwongla Capicle. Hormona leo tako eprektikile echa. Ehani machtikalona matrecho ha. Unchina kakamit hopina, inamit hoki. La kotogna which hoki hechuse, imichache. Na ganspe makyapi. Naha etahan chantet in the okola kichekile, ochlate hechuse, imichachamcha ho etaha, ola kotogna noji, no oyategle no oichoki. Na kakamit hoki le, ehani chantet in the okola kichekile aikwakike. Nakpa nicha echoksto. Na ehani si tranka on gitchapi o tra oyate gena wichaka soto chankpe opi timon hehan kaka on gitchapi hechachba si tranka optu. Hoeta han let chantet in the nachti trokata ke yana oel oyate on gitchapi le okala o anke ke ena nachti gichachab chakaka mitchaki Roy Martin he insha aikwake. Chawan spekele on kupi. Na onchi makhaki hechuns on kinajib. Na onchi mitchaki le Sicilia. Little Elk Martin, he insha o spemaki. Na inamit hockey, which hone ayushtanki he Ivan Jane Martin the Chelslo. Hena Yamani piki le Lakota kilino spemaki, na taco hena aikwaki, hena legends emaganaka, o yunkawana imichach na zapta opanche ake zapta wahina chikilena wakota, wana legends waklake. Na haetan ha oatek na toni eaktonji oakisni. Hoch lila in hangsti, wanneer tot hoogzak le hiuki lila ioti ekjapi. Os niet ganka, hoog tagne jutapsni. Tatako hena aikrak al mila haska wichakukti, na waniche. Heonche ook hola kichik lena trokata kiapi na ha. Hola kota na wamgek lena eongana kamina oichun kiapi. Hoeta ha echus ke waglaki na ha. Mila haska tchawichocha he monuk te hanta, takomene wola kota ki le trokel hechus ewagana kina etan ha laksapi ki le wagana. What I said in my language, my name is Canupa Gluha. I represent the Lakota Nation, and also I'm the warrior leader of the Strong Heart Warrior Society, which is an ancient dog soldier society given to our people way back in ancient times, times before I was even born. So we're looking at times immemorial when this understanding came about amongst the Lakota people. And the Dog Soldier Society was originated by one of my great-great-grandfathers who is perishing and his body's laid to rest in the Wounded Knee Massacre site in Wounded Knee, South Dakota. His name is No Ears. That's my blood and my generation where I come from, at the discretion of my grandmother and my mother and my grandfather. I'm also a member of the Crazy Horse Band, the Natab Haslecha, meaning the Cuthead Band. Crazy Horse is a tribe that once lived in the territory of Slim Buttes on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. That's where I come from. And on my grandmother Cecilia Martin's side, Little Elk, I come from the other side of the Little Crow, Cante, which was also a treaty signer of 1868. If you look at that treaty, you'll see Cante, the Little Crow. His name is on there. And that's the bloodline where I come from, because my grandmother's parents, they come from that type of traditional concept in that life. And today we talk about, our understandings of what I was involved in. And so being reared up in the strong heart, way of life, I've encountered so much atrocities that were, you know, being forced upon my people at the hands of the American government. And to this day, at the age of 55, I continue to serve that purpose of standing up and representing my people with good intention. Most of the time, most people don't want to get into those things. I'm not here as a spiritual person. I'm not here to say that I'm a medicine man or anything. I'm a warrior. That's all I know how to do. In our language, we call it Cante. Cante is a warrior. Nowadays, you call him Akichita. Akichita is a person that gives adherence to the American flag. That I will never be, and I never have. And so today, I represent this understanding for the Lakota people and the nation I'm from, which is the Takeover, from the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in the state of South Dakota.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'd like to have Mark, Crow Dog, if you'd like to say who you are.
My name is Mark. I'm just here to support my uncle and what he does, and you know, glad to be here, and thank you.
And Harry, Mitchell.
Mitch, I'm here as well to support Canupa Stoneheart. My family, my dad's side came from a war-born family. My grandfather was born in Porcupine District. On my mom's side, I'm European descent, English and Irish. I'm just glad to be here. Thank you.
And Anna?
Scared. Zena, Oyate.youtube.com. That's in English, Naomi Archer. Zahara Sabak. Haise Huriye Toniatse. What I just said in my language briefly is, my name is Ana Oyate. My people come from a place I know as Land of the Wind, which is Europe. A place we know is Europe. I'm descendant from several peoples in Europe. The language that I speak is what we know as Basque. It's the language of my Leroux and Laroque ancestors. I'm also descended from Kahiro Doherty, who was one of the last Irish chieftains to survive on Ireland. He was crossed by the British and ended up being murdered as he rose up against the English occupation of Ireland. I also have ancestors from Swabian Germany. The Swabians were a migratory band of Germanic tribes that fought the Romans at the Rhine River. So these are my people, where I come from, and it's an honor to be here with my big brother, Canupa, and my other warrior brothers to be on your show, Neil. Thank you.
And I'd like to do is have Canupa explain a little bit about the Wounded Knee and what it meant.
First of all, when I look at, understandings that are being, presented to us in an open forum, I always want to try to keep in mind that the life that was given to me at an early discretion back in 1959, my grandmother, my mom, my grandfather, and many others that reared us up into the traditional concepts of our life. Today's teachings and generations are forgetting these virtues. And in reality, there's no longer a value system that gives the real traditional education to a world that can't be seen. And so when I reflect to this kind of a message and understanding when I'm being, interviewed and talking about the real situations that's going on in my country, I always want to take the time to enforce more of an independent energy to the direction where I would prefer all nations to go on this journey. Now, during the time when I was born on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, I encountered a lot of atrocities being forced upon my people at the hands of the federal government, better than known as the United States government. And so from that time on, I also saw and witnessed how the federal government infiltrated the tribal government, which never ever took on a real truthful responsibility to recognizing the concept of how America practiced and perfected colonial policies against First Nations people. And so at an early age, I seen how my reservation at one time, back in the beginning of the 60s, late 50s and so forth, had 4 largest industries in the country, within the western hemisphere of South Dakota. One of them was a moccasin factory. The second one was a bakery. The third one was a fish hook factory, that where our people, the Lakota, created these Mets lures at the discretion of a company that authorized, you know, its perfection to be handed down to the Lakota people. And the fourth enterprise of that was we had the largest cattle industry in the country. And so subsequently to that, I seen how the Indian Reorganization Act of 1934, better known as the Wheeler-Howard Act, was forced upon our people at a discretion that did not take a majority of vote of traditional people to accept that concept at the discretion of the federal government. It was all a lie to my people, and so the American government and, you know, the IRA government took control of neutralizing my people's right to be self-sufficient and independent. And so at an early age, I encountered a lot of this stuff, which led to, you know, the takeover of Wounded Knee, our massacre site. And it was the American Indian movement that came in and listened to the poor people and the traditional people on Pine Ridge. At a young age, my grandmother, Cecilia Martin, my aunt, Lima Martin, they used to go to all these functions. And Grandpa used to tell my mom, you tell your son to go with him, his grandmother. So I went with my grandma Cecilia and my Aunt Lima. And Mom used to say, you know, you need to represent us this way, son, as the youth. Back then, I never understood the uses of alcohol, drugs, or certain pharmaceuticals because it never was something in my everyday life growing up in a poverty-stricken reservation that I had to seek, you know, some type of attention to receive it. And so at that age, when I went into, you know, the meetings and all the stuff, when I seen AIM come into Pine Ridge, then I witnessed that people at my age back then, I was 12 and 13 when the big uproars happened in Pine Ridge. And so when I saw AIM at 12, I seen, you know, Dennis Banks, Russell Means, main one, and, you know, his cousin, which is actually his sister, Barbara Means. And I never ever thought that my own family of the No-Ears and Martin would ever marry into the family of the Meanses. And my Uncle Melvin, my mother's little brother, married Russell's sister, Barbara Means. And who would ever think that as years, you know, progressed, as we move forward into the struggle of our independence and recognizing our freedom, that I would work with the late Russell Means. And I knew these guys back in the days when I was young. And so I have a real strong, you know, virtue of that. You know, I can go back even into the time when, you know, Grandpa Frank Foolscrow, Uncle Pete Catches, Dawson Has No Horse, Alex Eagle Elk, Tom Eagle Fox, even my grandfather Roy Martin, Paulie Little Spotted Horse. These were people that understood the mechanism of freedom that were born in the late 1800s and early 19 and are no more. And so I had a real remarkable upbringing with them and taking part in their participation of everything that was done in a Lakota's point of view, meaning language, ceremony, tradition. And again, I was brought up under the Cante concept of a warrior society, like what we have in our banner called the Cante Tenza or Kolakiche. And in English, it's called the Strongheart Warrior Society. And so this is the kind of stuff that I, as at the age of 55, been brought into, because it was to protect and serve that purpose of the original ancient dog soldier society when that leadership was handed down to me at an early age. And I can really talk about all those things because even in today's environment, you don't hear of anybody mentioning these things that they encountered from ancient times. They don't know people that gave them the clarification to understand the traditional mechanism in our life. That mechanism is about loving the principles in life. And in Lakota we say, "Wo Lakota kelila otechike," but how many people really grasp on that? If you have spirituality, if you have the virtues of life, there would be no reason for us to encounter this English concept of putting the first education, which is your Lakota, before you. Right now, today, as I speak on 2015, our people are taking on the English concept, and they think that is the purity. Just like the Puritans, when they destroyed and counterattacked a lot of these areas that belong to us. And one of my people that lived around here, you know, the Abenaki and all the other ones, you know, the Huron, they roamed this great territory. Where are they, America? Where are they? And that's the question I always try to tell, you know, white America, because I want them to understand that where we come from in the Midwest, okay, in the Western Hemisphere, you have the Lakota, you have the Cheyenne, you have the Arapaho, you have, you know, the Nez Perce, you have the Bloods, you have all these other nations, the Chiricahua Apache, the Dene. All of them are getting back into the virtue of seeking their full-fledged independence because America has never took that from them. And so to this day, as we're talking in 2015, none of the native nations in the Western Hemisphere ever relinquished their independent nation status. How remarkable and profound is that? It's beautiful. And Lakota people are struggling just to keep our tradition, custom, and our territorial bases intact. And ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, man, it's so, you know, hard taking these, you know, approaches to move forward on that even our own become our worst enemy. Families, all this turn against us because they never ever want to give up that comfort zone that the American government and the tribal governments have forced upon them. And so that's how I make this story very short.
Yeah. Nice, nice, beautiful. I mean, and that's what, you know, White Eagle Speaks TV is about. It's about honesty, bringing honesty out to the people, to you. And I'd like to, I'd like to know, question I have is go back to the beginning. How you came involved with the people.
With Cante?
Yes.
My big brother?
Yes.
Well, it was 2005, and I had the story goes, I had a really powerful dream. And in that dream I saw teepees, I saw plains people. And you know, a lot of white people, when we have dreams of this place, we immediately think, oh, that's what I need to become. That's what I need to take on. But instead what I thought is, well, obviously my ancestors, my own ancestors from Europe are trying to give me some understanding about where I should go next. And so I came out to South Dakota to an event called the World Peace and Prayer Day, because I thought that was a place that maybe I should go. I didn't know. But the way that event happened was some of the leadership sort of fell apart, and it ended up being a group of some European people, some folks from Japan, and then Native people, including the Warrior Society, Cante, and also the Takalas, the Kit Fox Society. And we all sort of came together to make this event run, because there were elders there from all over the world, and they needed to be respected, and this ceremony needed to go on. And I'll never forget this. We had about a day and a half left to do this event, and because I had been an activist and organizer for several years, and was good at facilitating meetings, I offered to facilitate a meeting. And so I got up there, and I had an easel pad and a marker, and man, we were going through the meeting, and I was getting everybody, writing everything down. The way that I knew how to facilitate a meeting, man, we got a lot done. We were just getting all kinds of stuff done. And our brother, Louis Janice, who was head of the Takalas at the time, came up to me afterwards. And he said, Naomi, wow, we got a lot done. But that's not how we do things. And I took a deep breath. And again, you know, white people, people of European heritage, we're very fragile. We're always looking to Native people for approval or spirituality or whatever, because we have a giant hole in our spirits because we've lost where we come from. We've lost who we are. So we have this giant hole in ourselves, and we're always trying to take things like symbols of Native culture and images of Native culture and make them our own, even though they don't belong to us. Well, when our brother Louis said this, I stepped back and I took a deep breath. And I said, I'm sorry. What can I do better next time, if you even want me to do it next time? I'm terribly sorry. I didn't mean to offend anybody. He said, no, you did a great job. We got a lot done, but we just need to do it the Lakota way. And that was a wonderful learning experience for me. And in hindsight, I think my big brother was actually behind that, because if he had come up to me, he would have had the power and perhaps the anger of a white person stepping in and offending the Lakota people and the other Native people that were there. And Louis was able to approach me in a way that I could hear and not react. And so he came up afterwards, and we sat down and we had a talk. We found out that we both did activism, and it started there 10 years ago. And so since that time, we've been working together. I started supporting the Strongheart Civil Rights powwows, which my brother can explain, and with the organization that I was working with, More Directions. And we've been growing together ever since. He asked me to be his little sister. And you know, I have to comment on that too. For white people, we absolutely fantasize being adopted by Native folks. And we all know that's true. White people we're dying to be Native in some way. And not once in the 10 years that my brother and I have ever been together have I ever, and nor has he ever given me, any part of Lakota culture. Never. Instead, just like I said, that dream was my ancestors giving me a kick in the butt to go out and find what belongs to me. And in that 10 years, and the progress of that is actually a little bit longer, but in this 10 years, I've reached out and I found what belongs to me. I found my own culture from across the water. And that's what I'm trying to reclaim. I'm trying to learn my languages again. I'm learning the things that give me substance once more. And I have a big debt of gratitude for my auntie and my brother, who has helped to make that possible. But I just have to say, not once did we ever breach the protocol of peoples coming together in a good way, to breach that protocol of creating love and togetherness amongst peoples, not just individuals, but amongst peoples. Because all of our peoples, at one time, we all had protocols for how to relate to one another that created health and balance. And my brother and I, just in our little relationship, in our relationship as brother and sister, we've tried to observe the protocols that our peoples have so that we can create health and balance. And this mess that we've created through colonialism, in one little way, we're healing just a little bit of that mess in our relationship. And that's an honor. That's an honor to be a person from Haise-Huria, the land of the wind that I know, to be a part of this relationship and as a part of Cante. So that's a long story, also very short. So
thank you very much. I mean that's how you speak the truth, honest, from your heart. That's, Mark, got to know how you got involved and what you bring.
Well, I actually started off with Mitch. He was helping my sister out and stuff. Actually, I knew my uncle, doing this kind of stuff, but I didn't know too much about it, And but he came along and he was telling me about everything that my uncle was doing. And so when I heard it, I thought about it for a while, I was like, well, that's something I want to do, because not a lot of guys my age are doing that. They're out, partying, doing drugs, just acting a fool, going to prison, stuff like that. I don't want to do that. I want to serve my nation, the Lakota nation, And yeah, that's how I came about. It was Mitch, he's telling me about it. So he said, "You want to go along for the ride?" And I said, "Yeah, let's go." So here I'm with my uncle, he's teaching me a lot, He gets on my case sometimes, Actually a lot, but he's teaching me. I know he doesn't mean anything bad for it. He's always just to inspire me, do better, Come to Cante, like he says, That's what I want to do. stand up for not just my nation, but every nation here in Turtle Island. And yeah, that's kind of that's me.
Yes, and it can help the youth,
yes,
as well.
That's something also I was looking into. I do want to teach the guys my age or younger. Not only guys, but the kids, everybody. Just tell them we need to start picking up our culture because we're losing it fast, rapidly. Changing. Like my uncle said, the English language is top priority now. It's not the the guttural language anymore. And that's something that I need to learn on too. I'm trying to learn that myself.
Yeah.
I don't know everything. Actually, I don't even know a lot, but I listen. So, and that's what I wanna bring all the youth and just every nation to actually just want to push them. Tell them, hey man, just learn what you can, man. Learn your language, learn your culture. Learn your history. Yeah.
Yeah, because there's so many of our children, our youth out there who are lost, like myself. I've been adopted and grew up in a white society, and we learn from each other.
Yes.
And that's the thing. We learn from each other and grow together. And in unity. Working together. And Harry.
Well, I got involved with Cante Tenza a little over a year ago. I was going to school in Modesto Junior College in California, and I had started an organization called Red Nations. It was an indigenous club for students there, and we started having it was straight up discrimination by the administration. This college is an agriculture-based college that's white priority. And if you were indigenous, they didn't want nothing to do with you. And as we were going along forming a powwow, and getting ready for a 16th annual powwow, which by the way, because of this administration, they're not having it this year. They canceled it, they took away the funding. They were discriminating against the African people as well as Mexica people. And so we were starting to organize a little bit, and I was reaching out trying to get help outside. I contacted Fred Short from the American Indian Movement on the West Coast. He didn't want nothing to do with it. I contacted our tribal vice president, Tom Poorbear. He didn't want nothing to do with it. Contacted John Trudell, got no response back from him. And so in my looking for help and assistance for the students that we had, I came across the documentary Red Cry. I watched it, and the compassion and the conviction that this man right here to your left speaks on, it stirred something in me. And so I looked for his phone number and I called him. I left a message. He didn't answer. He had a message, so I just told him who I was, and I was, if he could give me a call back. And he called me back, and that was about a year and a half ago. And he came out there with one of his nephews and nieces, and he helped us in our protest and our rally. He was there for our powwow. He was just there, and what he stands for and what he fights for is something I've always believed in, is fighting the system, this colonial power, letting white people know that we're tired of their bullshit, and trying to store our people up and give us that strength and fortitude to stand up against the system, because a lot of indigenous people don't have that strength and conviction. They believe it in their heart, but they don't have that backbone, because boarding school or adoption or whatever, alcohol, drugs, they don't have that backbone to stand up and tell the system, fuck you. And he's got that, so I've been on the road with him for over a year now. We've been all over this country seeing white people play Indian. We've seen people sell our sacred items. We take them from them. We don't let them sell those items. And he stands up for, Cante Tenza stands up for, indigenous rights. We travel many different nations to speak with them, and it's something that I'm glad to be a part of. I'm glad to be able to be here, and I'm glad to be able to learn from Chanupa, and it's just something that I've always wanted. Because my family was isolated from that. My grandfather went to boarding school, and he went out, and he didn't ever go back home. So I raised by him when I was little, but I always knew I was a Lakota, but I just didn't know where to look to find it, and I'm finding it now.
Very inspiring. I mean, spoke the truth and honest and good. Canupa, what, talk more about American Indian movement, and what it means to the people.
Well, back in the days when I was in AIM, and I was at a young age, AIM came to me, like I said, when I was 12 years old. In 1972, we had a big flood, okay, on June 9th in Rapid City. It wiped out, a lot of the townsfolk, especially a lot of our tribal members that lived in the little hamlet of Rapid City, South Dakota. There was almost close to 238 men, women, and children that lost their lives. Some of them were indigenous people, my people from Pine Ridge and Standing Rock Group. And at that time, my Aunt Bessie in Dawn Knife, she was alive then, and that's where my Cheyenne blood comes from, the Dawn Knife family and the Noyers family. And so when I seen AIM go up to Rapid City at a young early age, they were taking part in helping, the victims that, were perished in that. This Patola Reservoir, it busted in the heavy rain. And it came down the mountain tops and just wiped out Rapid City. And so, not the higher elevation of Rapid City, but the lower, climax. It took them out. And so, from there on, when AIM started making this, appearances on Pine Ridge, they came to a real standstill when my late uncle, Raymond Yellow Thunder, was killed in Gordon, Nebraska. And so my relative, he's also, a good, fellow patriot of ours in the struggle, Sievert Youngbear, was requested by the Eagle Fox family and the Yellow Thunder family to go seek help and find somebody that would get the message out where we could, start having our voices heard. Lo and behold, they found AIM in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and they seen all what they were doing. And at that time, this is when Russell Means first, caught wind of them, because the late Russell Means used to work at the Cleveland Indian Center in Cleveland, Ohio. So he was the director. And so, I for one, as a personal, person of this lifestyle and this struggle, I remember, how Russ he was very vocal. He wasn't the type of person that was calm in his municipalities. He demanded that kind of understanding by saying, I'm going to stand on my principle, and if you can't accept it, then, well, he used the cursing words bluntly. And so, during that time, I seen the rest of the leadership of AIM, and they didn't have that type of smugness, but it gave Russ the ability to represent himself as a Lakota person. And so, lo and behold, as I said before, I never thought that me and him would ever, work together, and, I would be his personal bodyguard back when he was alive. And, my own family married into the family, of the Means family. My Uncle Malvin, he had 4 boys from Barbara. And so, one of them, had a pizza joint in a town called Shattern, Nebraska. And then the older son had a transmission shop in Shattern. And then, of course, the other 2 passed away. And so, that's kind of the struggle of what life was about. But in the meantime, back to, the whole scenario about this, when AIM became very prevalent within the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, as I said earlier, it took, Sievert Youngbear to go out there on a mission to bring back this urban warrior society. And they were very militant. And boy, they were outspoken. And, wherever you went, AIM brought, rumbles of chaos and destruction. Because that's what our ancestors used to do when we seen, wagon trains and all that shit. We were stopping them and trying to, push them out because they were entering our sacred domain. Well, today you don't hear anybody getting into that type of power and progress by moving forward. I mean, if you look at this XL pipeline thing, and people are, griping and complaining and bitching about that pipeline, but that pipeline can't feed me. It doesn't serve the purpose of saving my people, okay? And I'm very, very against that, because even though there's a symbolic meaning to it, you will always defeat the purpose when you continue to allow America's social distortion to operate your conviction. What do I mean by that? Well, if you're going to fight against the XL pipeline, quit using the automobile, because the extracts that come through that pipeline create automotive material. So you defeat the purpose. So here we are as a human flesh, fighting this whole abstract of an illusion at the discretion of, you know, the American, you know, corporation. But none of our people are giving a damn about our people. Scores of our children are getting taken away because of foster care, you know, implementations, because we are socially, you know, brought into a mechanism because we're codependent on the system through alcohol, drugs, and pharmaceuticals. And if you come to Pine Ridge and you ever look at Pine Ridge and go inside Foothold, first front, everybody's going to push you off into a small mechanism that can never ever put the blame on white America. And here we are still struggling, trying to get that message back out there. So AIM at that time made Pine Ridge become a place of a rude awakening. And a lot of things happened there. I mean, I know I was there and I lived it and I'm still living it. I'm probably one of the last living, you know, youngest AIM members that ever had foothold in there. I could tell my story. I remember all the brothers, even like Cooney Dog and, you know, one of my main brothers, Tony Bush. Nobody talks about my good friend Tony Bush. He was in there with me. He walks the roads from his house in a place called Oblaya between Sharp's Corner and Porcupine. Every day he walks to get to his places. He reminds me of the time when I used to see older people, elders, grandmas and grandpas, walk the road without being molested or abused. And Tony's one of them in this godforsaken day in 2015, still walking them roads. And so that's what I see from his participation, because he was in there with me in Wounded Knee. So was another brother we called Pretty Face Mesta. These guys were there, and they experienced all this, because there are many others that never ever get their told, you know, to the truthful intent. You got all these new agers of the American Indian movement, and again, they have not experienced the shit we went through. You know, I went to prison, you know, for doing this shit to a cop, okay, at an early age. And the only ones that were behind me with my family was the late Russell Means, Leonard Crow Dog, my grandfather Roy, my grandmother Cecilia Martin, my mother, and my Aunt Lima. Those are the real things that represented our behavior. And again, as the atrocities continue to unfold and get heavier after AIM and Goon was neutralized because of the behavior of how the federal government infiltrated it, a lot of us youngsters continued to fight our own half-breeds. And see, the half-breeds were still at the power of the federal government's destruction. And so to this day, in 2015, we're still fighting it. They got our people so divided, fighting each other, and that's the course of why America likes to repeat history. They never want anybody to achieve, you know, the vocal intent about being, you know, independent. My nephew, 25 years old, facing that type of thing because he can't go home and receive the traditional concepts that are supposed to be for him. That's what America's always saying, that we have to protect and serve and, you know, have some type of, you know, native curriculums established to protect and serve these kids. Well, unfortunately, that's untrue. White America loves to lie. And this is what we don't ever talk about. And when you, earlier in this conversation, and you and I were talking off on the couch there, you talked about going to the Denver March powwow. I really respect powwows. Powwows, I really do respect them. But I can't stand it when our people are competing just like white Americans. You see, the powwow and the wachipi, which we should be calling it, have become an unhealthy, you know, disturbance of a commercial, you know, lifestyle. That here we are worshiping idols that don't belong to us. And our people are quantifying the purpose in life to try to make money. Well, god dang, man, our people never lived in that kind of a value system. We live this way with the war club, the sacred drum. The people itself was a value. Not once do you hear anybody taking this approach on. And I understand that a majority of our mixed blood people and many of these Indians that are educated, they have the pronunciation that we have to be humble. Most of all, we have to be passionate and compassionate by having this, you know, affected, you know, behavior, which is very pleasant enough to serve the purpose of white America. Well, I find that to be very alarming, disrespectful, and most of all, that's the most heinous behavior that indigenous people can ever use to try to show themselves before a society that don't like you, and most of all, that wants you gone, meaning annihilated. And thanks to white America, they're on the verge to do that, because on April 15th of this year, the termination policy goes into effect. How many of the rest of the nations are griping about this whole understanding? Okay, when termination policy continuously takes effect, younger people like him cannot get the proper education and be successful in white America, so one day they can go back home and do something to help the majority behind them, that the youth of that generation is coming to supersede in a future that is theirs. Now every person within the history of America, and I don't care if they're what nation they're from, fact of the matter that I like to attack America's bureaucracy is, number one, education doesn't mean anything to any color of man, only the white man. But it's all brand new, because it comes from the Holy Roman Catholic version of education, where they separate people by age. Okay, and to this godforsaken day, if you go into the public schools and you see that our children are separated at the age of 6 clear up to 13, okay, and then 13 to 19, and now our children here in America, this so-called rich and fantasized lifestyle, okay, they have given a falsified pretext in life to not allow children to learn the basic human relationship with each other. Look at it. And so when you practice and perfect colonialism, you eliminate the rights to your belief in freedom, and you can't exercise your independence, and therefore sovereignty doesn't work. Nowadays, you look at every reservation in our continent, they're all quasi-sovereign. They talk treaty games, they talk, none of that is real. If it was, then why the hell am I using his language? To communicate with the rest of the world. Bullshit. We're supposed to be a free and independent people that exercises our language from its original tent. What's the tent mean? Well, it comes from the Buffalo people. This afternoon, it was remarkable that my little brother Mitch showed me a picture of how the Buffalo were talking Lakota. Ain't that right? I showed him. Listen to him. And so that's where the language comes from. So for many, many other indigenous people that are trying to reconnect to their traditional identity and language, ladies and gentlemen, put the white education aside and kill it, and go back into the wilderness upon your grandmother, the earth, and reconnect with your language amongst the animal nations. It's right there. But you're so, deluded from, the reality that, oh, you think, man, modern technology is going to give you a truthful intent to obtain that type of indigenous, education? Bullshit. All of that was brand new, because when Rome set out to conquer the world, they used priests, because priests couldn't give that kind of adherence to that philosophy. So they turned around, and it was, as the rest of America don't want to get into it. When you look at Christianity, and you look at Hinduism, Islamic, Buddhism, you look at all of these, spiritual, upbringings in life. And if I offend people that are listening on this, Close Turkey TV, program today, I don't give a damn if it offends you. If you don't get to the truth of what's really happening, what white America's, imposing continuously, you're going to fail the purpose to be a legitimate and an elder educator within your own nation. And we're on that verge. The Lakota people in the Western Hemisphere are facing a criteria of our language on a verge of extinction. We are less than 1% of that. So that means the average of 14% of the people that speak the fluent language, that language is on the verge of extinction. Thanks to you, white America, you are the problem. But nobody wants to blame you today. You got all these people of color coming into my country, and they're giving them countless amounts of thousands of dollars to create free enterprises and economic development. Well, what the hell about First Nations people? What about us? Where do we get our royalty checks? And when, the late Eloise Cobell had her court settlements, being brought into the American mainstream, you have white people claiming to be Indian just to get a check. I mean, that's an insult to indigenous people. And so here's now, this is how the termination policy came into effect. Because no longer they want to go by blood quantum, but blood quantum comes through animals. I mean, goddamn, America, you should have did that to your own genes. But yet, you can't do it because you are the offsprings of your holy father, Rome. Bottom line, if you've ever been to Washington, D.C., go in and look at it. That's a replica of Rome in a modern convenience. Okay? And no offense to the, no offense to the French people, that goddamn statue that's in New York City holding this big, flaming torch, that's an insult to women. Because women never ever said that they would come back as stone. Never. And see, here they are, create something that reflects a bad virtue in our women today. Our women can't even wear a dress. If that was a symbolic representation, look at, the statue. She still has her dress on. And America doesn't allow the people to wear dress anymore. Look at the kids from the age capacity of 5 clear up to 21. They're all in pants. And so that the ideology of how Western culture depicts the meaning of life, they start lusting for all these little kids pervertically, thanks to white America's big father of Rome. And to this day, Native people are facing that same type of dilemma. And as you said earlier, you wanted to understand about the truth. Well, when I get into this kind of truth, one of the things that I want to reflect on that really grieves me, and I want to talk about these fucking half-breeds and the white race, just them two in particular. The Forced Penetration Act came out when the late Woodrow Wilson was a president. Him and a senator by the name of William McIntosh. And you'll never hear anybody in society or even in the indigenous populations and the communities talk about this shit. This Forced Penetration Act was inflicted upon indigenous people to create the process of creating half-breeds for them to destroy full-blooded nations. And it was a simple, unique understanding, because when they got them to get the Jesuits and military people to rape our Indian women, and when they conceived and gave birth to this little fetus and life began, the parochial teachings of these Catholic, priests and nuns took that child. And they raised him under their principles of the golden rule of the Holy Roman Catholic version of that type of lifestyle. And so when they corrupted this little kid, they give him back to the mom, and now this child is uncontrollable. All the love that once the indigenous people imposed on this life and gave him a conviction and an attention and the most powerful embracement of a life that was pure and free, that child rebelled against his mom. And so now mom decided to take this little child and give the child to her parents, his grandparents. So now the little kid gets into that version. This perverted thing at the discretion of Rome and white America, it still goes on today. So that little half-breed child turned the grandma against the grandfather. Then turned around and turned the grandpa against the grandmother. And that's where the separation of a traditional value system of keeping parenthood together blown out of proportion. Look at it. And here's the biggest, most deceitful, hateful, heinous behavior in any type of field of philosophy. These effing fucking athletes are trying to run spirituality when they never believed it. They were never brought up into that. They don't even know what the whole primitive understanding between Lakota is. And yet, my full-blooded people on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation are struggling just to keep what remaining traditions we still have. And this is the God-forsaken truth that many other nations and either, the people of color can blame America for this heinous behalf of, enforcing, a hateful atrocity that eliminates people through culture's genocide and ethnic cleansing. And this is the kind of life that Canupa Gluha money of the Free and Independent Lakota Nation and the Strong Heart Dog Soldier Warrior Society continues to serve, because you poor people is all I have left. And goddammit, I will fight fucking white America over that shit, because I'm not going to allow them to take you from me. And it's not about raising the gun. It's protecting what you see in my hand, my traditional war club. And this is the message that we want white America to understand, because there are other nations that are on the verge of, returning back to their independence. The Yamasee people, the Chiricahua, the Blackfoot, the Arapaho, the Cheyenne, the Dene, and many other sister bands of the Apache Nation. They're all wanting that. After we're done here in this state, we have a virtue to get down and help the Chiricahua take back, and make a standstill within their land, where a corporation that's seeking to make, copper is trying to enter. And it takes resistance from other nations to stand together. and face, you know, the white man with his own traditional conviction. And to this day, none of us nations are doing just that. And this is how white man continues to say, little Indian, I will never ever give you that forefront to take back of something that I own. Well, I beg to differ, white America. You step foot in our sacred circle, you will never ever get off. And that's my message to white America. In other words, the truthful stand, leave us fucking indigenous people alone so we can be successful to save what little poor people we have. Because we have lived by your golden rule, and goddamn it, to this day in 2015, it doesn't work. And I'm sorry, little brother, that you went through that, forced penetration act of being removed from your identity. Well, you're not alone in these struggles. The Strong Heart Warrior Society will always be there for whenever you need to, man, challenge something. Give us a call. We'll do it all.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Thank you very much. And, having the truth be told, on White Eagle Speaks TV. And it's an honor to have positive people here, to speak the truth, who we are as people, talk from the heart, and that's what you have to do, speak from the heart, be truthful with you and with others around you. So, everyone, have a great day, and hope to help